Hey, everybody, this is Chris
and Kathy
from PetAbility Podcast. We wanted to take a minute to thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate every listener and are grateful for this platform.
Please help us share our vision by subscribing to PetAbility Podcast through your favorite streaming app. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at PetAbility Podcast and share our content on social media.
You can also support the show by making a donation. Simply go to our website at petabilitypodcast.buzzsprout.com and click on the heart symbol at the top of the page. Thanks for listening.
We hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to PetAbility. I'm your host, Kathy Simons.
And I'm your host, Chris Cranston. Our podcast provides interviews and information to help your pets live their best lives. Good afternoon, Kathy. How's it going today?
Hi, Chris. I'm doing well today, and I'm really excited to talk with our guest today.
Me too.
Today, we are going to be speaking with professional dog groomer, Meghan Terwilliger. Meghan is a member of the New England Pet Grooming Professionals, as well as the National Dog Groomers Association. Meghan is the co-owner of the Soggy Doggy in Norwood, Massachusetts, where her and her partner opened their doors in 2011. And since then, they've received yearly accolades from the Reader's Choice Awards. And this is a pretty big deal because it's voted in by the people in your community. So they've been sort of recognized as top dog, if you will in their field. And yeah, I know. I went there. Yeah. And Meghan and her partner are also certified fear-free groomers. And this is what I would really like to delve in today with Meghan, as well as about regular grooming and how that contributes to the health and well-being of our pet, but also, and how it relates to mobility as well. And there's been a big movement over the years in veterinary medicine to move towards fear-free practices, to make these overall experiences more pleasant and less frightening for animals. And so I'm really excited to see that other animal professionals are moving towards having this fear-free experience for our dogs, and how that affects their emotional lives as well. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce you, my friend, and more importantly, my dog's groomer, Meghan Terwilliger.
Welcome, Meghan.
Hi, guys. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome.
Thank
We're
you.
excited to have you. So I'm going to just delve right in because, as Kathy mentioned, I think we want to focus a little bit more based on kind of the overarching theme of our podcast into the health and well-being side of grooming. Growing up, I, thought dogs only got groomed if they were fancy dogs because I grew up in rural Iowa. So, we plunked our dogs into the tub and that was, about it. But Meghan, can you describe why grooming is so vital for our pets' overall health and well-being in terms of not just to smell good or look good, but how does it impact their health?
Of course, I'd love to. For so many reasons, grooming is vital for that reason. We as groomers are really the front line of defense for the dog's health, in my opinion. We see the dogs generally on a 4 to 6 week basis, which is much more frequently than a veterinarian gets their hands or eyes on a dog, which is usually only annually once a year for their general physical checkups and all of that, unless there's a problem. They're really only seeing these dogs once a year, and we're getting to see them, get our hands on them all over their bodies. We tend to notice any sort of, different skin growth, or a growth that's gotten bigger, a growth that's gotten different in color, different in size, a dark spot on a skin, things like that we noticed because we're looking for it, that the owners may not notice or may not feel. And a lot of the times they don't. They're quite surprised when we tell them. So just in general for that kind of thing, also skin and coat health is super important for dogs, and keeping them clean of mats and free of mats and matting. A lot of dogs right now have skin issues, itchiness, and things like that. That all can be seen at your groomer and helped from your groomer. We discover ear infections, skin infections, like I said, growths and stuff. We see fleas and ticks and treat that kind of stuff. Ear infections, which I think I already said actually, but oral health, oral hygiene is a big one. A lot of people aren't looking in their dogs' mouths, but we are doing that for you. So for me, it's all of that stuff is like, I like to call it kind of like a holistic experience, because the way I care for your dog when they come to me is that I'm caring about everything to do with your dog, just their health, how their nutrition at home might affect their experience with me, what that might look like for their skin. And I just want your dog to have a good experience when they're with me. So I personally think grooming is extremely vital, because I look at all of these things when the dog is with me.
Mm-hmm. I like how you say that you're the front line, in these animals' healthcare, and it really is true. And what we should consider you as part of our team, as part of this dog's team. So for me, you're part of Team Mac, right?
Yeah.
Because you see him every, 4 weeks, which is more than you said, less more than my veterinarian does. And he has an itchy, an allergy condition. And so I'm able to stay on top of that, because Meghan is kind of all up in his, she's all up in his business, inspecting his wrinkles. He's into it, but inspecting him overall, and maybe even some places that I probably don't necessarily think to check as well. So, Meghan, I have a couple questions for you though, too, about things like the hair and the skin coat and so forth, and matting, because Chris and I were having a discussion about how, grooming affects mobility, from our perspective, because we're rehabbers, right?
Right.
So I'm thinking that even little or small mats in dogs are probably painful, right? So when I find mats on dogs, I either tell them to go to the groomer, or I'll try my very best to brush it out, but I'm whatever, I can't do it that well. But
right.
even these small mats, even small hair mats, do you think that those are painful? It seems like it might pull at the skin. And from my perspective, that seems like if you're pulling at the skin, you're pulling at the myofascia, or if it's in an area like under your belly or your limbs, that restricting movement. Have you found that to be true as well?
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the common space for matting on a dog is behind the ears, in the legs, in the armpits, like you said, the kind of the groin area. And those are all motion areas. The dogs need to move their ears. You see dogs scratching at their ears. If there's a mat there and they're scratching at it to try and like relieve themselves from that pain, they're actually going to start causing themselves more discomfort, because if their nails are too long or have a blunt edge to them, they can start actually opening that skin up too and causing more irritation. I've had dogs, this is not so common, especially with clients that, come on a regular schedule. However, dogs that are so severely matted prevents them from doing much of anything, quite honestly. I've had dogs in the past that are completely matted head to toe that have been, they cannot defecate because everything's matted. Their tail is matted to their body. I've had to shave a dog whose tail was matted to his back leg.
Oh my God.
It's bad. It's like that stuff is definitely, it's painful. I even just compare it to like, even just the little things, like you said, like just a couple behind the ears or whatever. If you have ever had long hair and you wear your hair up in a ponytail all day and you get that, pulling, your hair is just pulling in the same spot and it feels tight. It's uncomfortable. You start getting a headache. You're like, starting to like bother your head and you want to take your hair out. Like they can't do that. Yeah. That's what we have to do. We have to be responsible for that.
Yeah. I've seen a couple of cases over the years, particularly this one little dog in mine that was taken from a pretty bad, was confiscated basically by the law because she was so badly neglected. And she had so much hair matting that she had actually lost so much muscle mass that she had to be hospitalized with us for 3 weeks after her grooming just to be able to start walking again, because that's how severe her muscle atrophy had wasted. She had basically wasted, her muscles had wasted away from lack of mobility. And of course, those are extreme cases, but still, overall, hair matting affects
It does.
Mobility.
It does. It affects mobility because especially with a dog like that, if the dog can't physically move because it's so matted that they can't move, or they can, but it's so painful to move and they choose not to, then of course their muscles are going to atrophy and waste. And that's terrible. That's terrible. It should never get like that.
Yeah.
It's like their fur, their coat, their hair can become like a body cast almost.
It is. Essentially, they're like stuck in a costume that they can't get out of.
Wow. So for our listeners, I want to remind them about how important the skin is, because not only for people, but also in our pets, the skin is actually the largest organ in the body. So it has such an important function in terms of protection from wounds, preventing bacteria and viruses from getting inside the body and getting to, those other organs like the heart and the liver and such, and also things like thermal regulation. So it is something that needs to be cared for just like you would care for every other organ in a being. Right, Meghan?
Yeah, it's absolutely true. So actually, the skin on a dog goes through a keratinization process, and it's a 21-day cycle. So when groomers recommend that you get your dog groomed every 4 to 6 weeks, it's coming from a specific spot. We kind of just generalize the 21-day to a month because that's easier for us to remember than 21 days. But really, it's because that cycle is of cells dying and shedding, and that's what needs to be removed. So frequent grooming in that cycle is you want to keep going so you can take off that layer of dead skin and debris and make sure that the skin can breathe and is getting proper circulation and oxygen and things like that. And you're removing out any dead coat that might be laying there, preventing the skin and coat type of that dog to do its natural process, because each dog breed or each coat type is designed to regulate a dog in a different way. So if we care for that properly and keep them all on a monthly cycle, they generally are healthier dogs for that.
Wow. I'm learning so much already.
I know. I didn't know that either, Chris.
Yeah. I just want to piggyback on that then,
Sure.
Because you're talking about like this shedding and this 21-day cycle. Isn't it true that a lot of folks that have allergies to their pets, it's not the fur or the coat itself, the hair, it's oftentimes the dander?
Yeah, it's the dander.
Right. So can you explain that a little bit and how that can help with like the humans in the household, maybe not being as allergic, if you will?
Yeah, you know what? I don't know that much about people's allergy reactions to that kind of thing because I don't deal with it personally. So if your dog is constantly getting regular grooming on the monthly schedule or every 4 to 6 weeks, I would assume that you would have a less allergic household because that debris and dander that is going through that cycle, that dead and dying cells on the surface of the skin is being removed, that you would have less of a reaction allergy-wise.
So Meghan, I agree. I think that, if that dander can be minimized, then not only can the people that care for the pet interact with that pet more comfortably, but also just preventing that dander from escaping into their environment, getting on the sofa and in the carpet and things like that, where, could exponentiate their allergies and their discomfort.
Yes, I agree.
I just want to touch, before I move on to the next thing, I just want to touch a little bit on nail trims. And I want to say, as a veterinary technician, the scariest words I've ever heard in my life are pug nail trim. It's terrifying to me because there are so many dogs out there, particularly pugs, who can be quite dramatic about their nail trimming. And I'm going to ask you about the fear-free grooming in a bit. But what I want to say about that is, first of all, when I tell people that their dog's toenails are too long, I think they're always surprised. And I think there's been at least one occasion where Meghan told me my dog's toenails were too long, and I was surprised. So we want to talk a little bit about, the appropriate length for the toenails, but also I want to touch on the rehab part, that the toenail trimming, this cannot be overstated. It is so important for mobility, right? The reason it's so important for dogs to have their toenails trimmed is because dogs are digitigrade animals. And that means that they walk on their toes. So if their nails are too long and they have to rock back on their feet to make room for their nails, now they've changed their posture. And if you think about it in terms of yourself, humans are plantigrade animals, and that means we walk on our heels. But what if you changed your posture and walked around like that all day? What if you walked on the ball of your foot or on your toes? Think about how your calves might feel, how your foot might feel, how your thighs might feel. I imagine by the end of the day, it probably would not feel good. Can we talk about what the appropriate nail length is for dogs?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You don't want them touching the ground. I would say most everybody's dog's nails are too long. If I could put a general blanket statement out there, I would say that people can't do nail trims often enough. Yeah, Kathy, nail trimming is very important. And I would say that what you said is right, that if the nails are hitting the floor, that's too long. And I would go so far as to saying that most people's pet dogs have nails that are too long. And it just might be convenience or people just don't think about it. But every 2 to 6 weeks is really a good time to get your dog's nails done. If you start hearing them dragging or clicking on the floor, or you just notice it from the way that they're standing, that their feet are splayed out, their toes are pushed out because their nails are growing so long that they're starting to curl. Things like that, that's not comfortable. Monthly is probably the most easy thing for people to remember and to actually follow through on getting the dog's nails done monthly. If your dog gets groomed every 4 to 6 weeks, you're probably good, but you could pop in sometime in between that to get your dog's nails done. If your groomer thinks that they're too long, I would just go by what your groomer says too. If you're unsure, you could always ask your groomer or ask your vet.
I think that the other thing that people don't think of about the nails is, one, like we said, how it affects posture, but also, when you're standing and your nails are too long, those nails push back into the nail bed, right? And that causes discomfort. And that may even be a contributing factor to osteoarthritis in the foot, that constant pushing up in the nail bed like that. So we can't state this enough about nail trims. It's imperative.
It is imperative. And I've seen them go so far as to be grown into paw pads. I've seen cat toenails that have been like actual spiral curls.
Yikes.
Yeah, it's bad. And when it gets into the paw pad, you're going to have a torn paw pad. It's going to get infected. Things are, so now that's an open wound on the bottom of a foot that touches every sort of ground surface with every kind of bacteria getting in it. They're constantly licking at it. And if you're not checking your dog's feet, you might not even notice it, but that kind of a thing is going to put them in extreme discomfort.
Right. And given the importance of your dog's foot, I think you should treat it as one of your dog's greatest assets to take care of the foot and the nails.
I agree. I would say that I completely agree.
And Kathy, to your point too, I absolutely agree with your statement of the contribution of the nails to arthritis in the feet. We've talked about this before on other shows where, there are so many little joints in the feet of both the front and rear legs, and a number of tendons and ligaments and connective tissue and fat pads and all of that stuff. And if, any person who has had the experience of a dog with a wound, to their pad or a torn nail, which again, they're at increased risk, I think, of catching a nail that's too long. And, I've seen them literally, ripped out of the nail bed. How much that hobbles them, how many nerve endings are there. But, back to your arthritis comment, the long nails are going to put all those little joints in a less than ideal biomechanical position so that they're more susceptible to wear and tear. And because they're a little joint, that can happen very quickly.
Yeah.
And Meghan, what do you say to those people that say, well, yeah, I would love to trim my dog's nails more frequently, but this is the famous quote, their quicks are too long.
So every time you cut the nail, the quick recedes a little bit. So that's how you get them shorter. The more often that you cut a dog's nails, the quicker you can get that quick back. So when we're trying to work back a dog's quick to get a short nail, we actually do have them come in usually weekly for a while, probably like a month to 6 weeks. We do every week, and then we move them to every other week, and then we can graduate slowly to like doing once a month.
To be clear, you're just trimming off a little bit, right? Because
just a little bit, yeah. And sometimes the angle of how you trim the nail is also really important, especially when you're trying to work that back. So I don't have the ability to show you on a diagram, but I'll try my best to explain it. Great. If you think about a nail like sort of like a hook, like it arches down, and you cut that at an angle, right? So then you end up with like a straight edge. If you actually cut the nail kind of perpendicular to the floor, if that makes any sense. So you cut it so there's more off of the top than there is off the bottom. Then the dog is going to start walking and naturally wearing that bottom part off itself.
So that's a good thing. That's what we want to do.
That's a good thing because that's constantly working every time they walk on pavement or whatever. That little bottom piece is going to wear back too. So you're encouraging them almost to self trim their nails at home, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I can totally picture what you're describing. So oftentimes there's like a little point, and that's on the top side. And so by trimming back that little point, then that allows for the pet to more naturally on pavement, maybe kind of sand off, if you will, the other portion, and then their quick will work back. I want to remind our listeners too what the quick is, because sometimes people haven't are familiar with that term. So can you explain that?
Yeah, so there's a blood supply. It's a little vein inside of the nail shell itself, and that part is what bleeds if you cut a nail too short. But it also grows longer with the nail if the nails are left untreated. I know we'll kind of reference my business page.
It's painful if you cut it. It's painful.
It's very painful if you cut it. It's very painful if you cut it. Yeah. And I know we'll reference where you can find all my stuff later on in the podcast. But I did over this COVID break do a lot of videos for my clients when we were closed down, because we were worried that people didn't have resources of like now they might have to groom their dogs at home, or do their dogs' nails, or how do we pluck their ears and clean their ears, and people just don't do that because they pay somebody else to do it.
Right.
So
that's fantastic that you created the videos.
Yeah. So there are videos and they're still up. So if anybody has any questions after hearing this about nail trimming or anything like that, there is a video there, and I can also do my best to help answer any questions about that.
Fantastic.
Thanks. Let's talk a little bit about the fear-free grooming, because I'm very excited about that.
Me too.
But first of all, Meghan, I want you to tell the audience, why should we be concerned with our dogs and cats having a fear-free grooming experience? Why should that concern us?
So why shouldn't it concern us?
I like that answer. Yeah.
That's the better question. Because everybody wants to have a pleasant experience in everything that they do. Animals are no different. And this is something that is a part of their lives for their whole lives, and should be, since they're little until they're old. And if it's a negative experience that they have to go through every 4 to 6 weeks, that really is unfortunate. You don't want that. You want them to have an experience that I like to say, I don't like to groom a dog and do something to a dog that is just letting me do it. I like to have an active participant who is joining in my conversation, if that makes any sense. I've seen it. Actually, my dog will join in his conversation with you. And I like this answer. And, from my perspective as a veterinary technician, if I can make the dog's experience positive, it's the best of my ability, because I can't always alleviate all fear at the veterinary, but I do my best to try and alleviate its fear as I can, because then I develop a relationship with that dog. And if that dog becomes ill, there's already a trust relationship established between me and that dog, right? So when that dog comes in and they're not feeling well, they already trust me. They're not afraid of me. It makes my job easier
but it also makes them less afraid. It also makes them, more at ease. It also makes their owners more at ease that I have this relationship with their pet.
Right.
So I think it's really important. I love your answer. Why shouldn't we be concerned with this? It's about their quality. It's a quality of life issue.
It's a quality of life. Yeah.
It's quality of life issues.
Yeah. And I feel the same. I want the animal to have a positive experience. There's no reason that whatever I'm doing should be negative. And I can't, like you said, I can't make every dog like grooming. Some dogs just don't. And there's nothing I can do to change their mind, but I can make it as pleasant as possible for them while they're in my care. And I always do that.
So I'm still,
the thing that also I want people to think about too is that I think it translates too. So how many times, Meghan, if you had a dog in your salon where they've had a bad veterinary experience and now that sort of translated to being afraid of the groomer, or vice versa for me, a dog that's had a traumatic grooming experience is now therefore afraid of, at the vet because it's translated. Yeah. Yeah.
It's unfortunate. It's sad. I actually have, we've gotten quite a few clients who have come in from other grooming places or like you said, just like, oh, he hates the groomer, hates the vet, has to be sedated for this and that. And it's like, why? So we always have them, come unsedated. And, people are really nervous to do that after they've been told their dog needs to be sedated. They're nervous to trust us to let them try. Yeah. And most of the time, it's just like, oh, they just don't really like their nails trimmed, or they don't like it when you touch their one back foot, or they don't like it when you're handling them that way. But if you're listening to what the dog is telling you, which groomers should be, and not all do, but if you're listening to what the dog is telling you, there's no reason you can't work around whatever their issue is. There just isn't.
And that's what I was going to ask you to extrapolate on, because I was still confused. Like, what does a fear-free appointment look like? Like what accommodations do you make? How is it different from maybe a salon that isn't certified in fear-free grooming? What do you do specifically?
Fear-free grooming and the way that we groom at our salon is that it's an overall health and well-being, and that includes mental health of an animal's while they're in our care. So that means that if we have a nervous dog on the table where somebody else might just disregard the dog's emotional feeling about it and just get it done, do it quickly, get it done, doesn't have to look pretty and send it out the door. So if I have a first-time client, or not even a first-time client, a repeat client that I'm working with, trying to get them acclimated to the grooming process, the first thing is watching how they walk through my door. Oftentimes the nervousness starts on the car ride actually over to the salon. And so you have to actually get the owners to participate in preparing the dog for the grooming, which starts with how are they putting the dog in their car? Are they putting the dog like running around trying to catch the dog and saying, oh, we're going to the groomer today. And the dog already doesn't like that word, right? So then they're dragging the dog in the car. They don't like car rides. I mean, that stuff all translates into what my experience with your dog looks like. So if you're, sometimes that has to start at home, but if your dog walks in my door and is nervous and won't approach me, I'm sitting on the floor. I have treats. I have several different kinds of treats. I'm tossing them at your dog. I'm holding my hand out with the treat in the hand, trying to get the dog to come to me. If that's not working, I'm going to like drum my nails on the floor, try to figure out what turns your dog on, what's going to make your dog happy and willing to come in to see me. Oftentimes we've been doing these things called meet and treats, where if your dog is one of the severe cases where it really can't walk through my gate, then we're just having you come in anytime. You're just popping in. We're throwing handfuls of the dog's favorite cookies on the floor. We're spending a couple minutes out there in the lobby with you, and a hello and goodbye. So every time the dog comes in, they're having an experience like, oh my gosh, I get to go into this place. I eat 100 hot dogs off of the floor. And then I get to go home. And like, how fun is that? Like, oh my gosh. And then here, then the car ride's exciting because oh my gosh, I might be going to that place that I get all the hot dogs. And, so then we get them in the door, and then we've got to get them in the tub. And it's the same way, you kind of get them into the tub room. Everything's quiet. We try to make sure the environment for a fear-free client is quiet and calm. We have lavender sprays and things like that we can kind of use diffusers in the air for their scent too. And just let them explore the area and make sure that they're doing it at their comfort level and we're not forcing them to do anything. The dogs have choices. They have choices.
Yeah. When Mac, I don't know if you remember the very first time we had him groomed, he was afraid to come in and he was ducking down a little bit and Meghan had to coax him a little bit. But now when we pull up to the soggy doggy, it's a different story. But I like how you took the time to approach him because we'd only had him for a short period of time. And if you think about his emotional life, he just went from the shelter to my house to your shop to get groomed, right? And then that first day, he just wasn't sure what was happening, who you were, what was going to go down. And now he's really excited about going. And now, in one time, he saw you outside of the shop, and I thought he was going to lose his mind. It's like, I can't believe I saw you outside of ours. But just taking that extra time for him, especially in that critical time frame for him when he was just getting acclimated into our family, right? So everything had just changed. Right. And now we are going to the groomer, right? So it was a big piece for him that he's now not afraid to go to the groomer and in fact enjoys going to your shop.
And if you think about it, I mean, you don't know, like on a day-to-day basis, people don't give me their rundown of what their week has been like or leading up to the hours and minutes that have caused this, you're dropping your dog off with me at this appointment, but this oftentimes has happened where even a client who's happy to come in on a normal basis is happy dog, whatever, easy to groom, no problem, has just been left for 2 weeks vacation while their family went somewhere. And now they're getting dropped off again. And they can even be a little bit anxious. So it's reading the situation every day, even if it's the same dog on a different visit, they might be having a different experience that day. If their owner was stressed, or their owner was having a bad day, that they pick up on all of those emotions, as we know. So it's just reading the moment and learning how to read the dog in the moment. That's critical.
And so it's just like us. Sometimes they're having a bad day. Sometimes you're in a mood, right? It's like
right.
And for our listeners, then I think a take-home message is, again, to consider all the things that are preceding this appointment, but also to communicate to the groomer any changes or what may have been going on most recently that could affect the grooming experience. So, responsibility for that is on the owner as well.
Yeah, it is. And you should be asked these questions when you go to your groomer. You should be asked, has there been any different health changes, any allergies, sensitivities, food issues, treat issues, any recent vomiting or upset stuff at home, anything like that. We should know that because that is going to help us best care for your pet, while they're in our salon.
And when they are there, Meghan, how do you ensure the safety of the pets in your care?
Safety in what way?
Well, I guess I had a couple of clients who have brought their dogs to me because a mishap has occurred at the groomer, meaning that they've slipped, maybe tried to jump off the table and being restrained. We've all seen the little tether that helps keep them in place when they're up on a table. Older dogs or dogs with disabilities that can't stand for a long time. And then they come back to PT and they're super sore, painful, fatigued. Yep.
So that's safety is like huge importance. First, we are also pet certified in CPR and first aid. So there's that for just general safety and cuts and nicks and anything like that.
Yes.
However, and your groomers should be, and you should ask that. That's important. You should know that. So in the tub, we have a metal grate that's kind of elevated from the bottom of the tub, so they're not standing in water. That's number one. And then on top of that is just a regular shower bath mat, non-slip, very grippy, cushiony. And then we have grooming loops in there, so they're attached to the tub. They are never left unattended. There is always a person with a dog. Or a person watching a dog. There's always a hand on a dog, or a set of eyes on the dog. So we're not like putting a dog in the tub and then walking away into another room to get something because they're attached. That doesn't work that way, because they can jump out or flip a leg out or get stuck or whatever. That's just common sense. So that's kind of how they're restricted. So they're restricted in the tub, and they've got the soft footing, the cushiony non-slip pad in the tub. We also have crates. So when they're not with us or not being worked on, they're in a crate. We have towels or mats or bedding that can be put in the crate if we think a dog has, issues with hips or joint pain or stiffness or anything like that. On the table, we have the Grooming Loops, which I think is what you're talking about, Chris. Which
right.
is how
I didn't know what the name was for that, but yes.
Yeah, Grooming Loops. So those do go around their neck. We have had a couple of dogs that have had trach issues, throat issues, or pacemakers. So they can't have Grooming Loops around their neck. So what we'll do is put them around their chest, or put it around the neck with one leg through it and keep it lower. Also, we can do some dogs on the floor. So that happens too. We generally will contort ourselves in uncomfortable positions in order to make your dog more comfortable.
Kathy and I know about
Chris
that.
comes in, human physical therapy.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Take one for the team.
Exactly.
She's seen it. Yeah.
Exactly. Take one for the team. So, and we also have, there's a great product out there called Paw Mat. And it's like a really thick yoga mat with I don't know, it's just like soft, and it's got, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch thick, maybe, or maybe thicker than that. I don't know, but we use that for the older guys, the sensitive guys. And some dogs actually enjoy it, and you don't actually have to loop them up at all. I have quite a few clients that don't need to be looped, and they just stay there, or they lay down. But as long as they're attended, they shouldn't be jumping off or doing anything like that. Obviously, we are working with live animals, and accidents happen. But we do try our best to limit anything like that.
I think that one of the things that makes me think about the safety is that I have a lot of clients that have senior, elderly dogs, and they're afraid. They're afraid to bring, or they're afraid that their dogs are in fragile state, and that something is going to, set them off, either their pain or their soreness or their stiffness. But I think that the senior dogs actually are probably one of the most important dogs for getting their grooming again, just like we talked about, for their skin, their nails, their overall health. So these dogs, maybe people don't think necessarily, I don't want to put my older dog through that. Well, first of all, if we have the fear-free experience, then, that makes it so much better. But I think that these older dogs are probably very well the bigger candidates for even to make sure, certainly, that they get groomed, because they're at so much more risk for other things, slipping, falling, getting injured in their home because of their nails or their, so.
So as I was saying before, each individual is treated case by case. So when a senior dog comes in, we're going to see how that dog is feeling in general, what the owner is telling us about what their mobility has been or what their issues have been, what leg is bothering them, how they can't stand up, whatever it is, we know that. And then we take that into consideration when we are, going through the grooming process. So those dogs, we try to get them done as quick as we can while they're as comfortable as can. We call those actually senior comfort grooms. So the more important thing is that the hair comes off where it needs to come off, the nails come off, and the dog is comfortable. It does not matter what your dog looks like that day. That just doesn't. I mean, we always do our best to give you a cute, pretty haircut, but it is humanity over vanity when it comes to that point. That whatever makes your dog comfortable enough to go home and not be stressed out, excuse me, is the best in that situation. So those paw mats that I was talking about, dog gets put on those. If it takes two of us, it takes two of us. If it's one person to hold the dog up while the other person just is able to quickly cut their nails, even if it's just 1 foot, then the dog can lay down. Then maybe we work on the face while the dog is taking a break. Then maybe we lift him up again. I mean, it's all based on what that individual needs for the day.
Okay. Wait. I want to go back to two things.
Oh, I know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
I got two. So one, you called it a comfort something.
Senior comfort
groom.
Senior comfort groom. That just sounds lovely. And Kathy, let's say it together. Humanity
over vanity. We're going to tagline that.
That
Meghan.
is a great
Humanity
quote.
over vanity. I would like to talk just for a second that I know that I sometimes get people in our office who go, my dog got a bad haircut and she's embarrassed. I don't think that's true. I think the owner might be, but I don't think the dog feels that. So I think humanity over vanity should be trademarked.
Yeah,
I agree. But it's true. It's true. I mean, and if they think their dog feels embarrassed, it's because they didn't like the haircut, or they're laughing because the dog came out of the groomer and is completely shaved, or whatever the situation may be, that it's their emotion that they're projecting onto the dog.
Yes.
It's like not understanding.
Exactly. The owner's embarrassed, and now the dog's like, oh my, there's something to be embarrassed about.
Something's wrong when they look at me.
Yeah.
So anyway, I love that.
And I would always coach, my owners of the patients that I had in rehab, a couple different things, because maybe they've been going to this groomer forever and they, love them. They have a great relationship, but now it's a different day for their dog. And so I would say, can you contact them? You've been a great client. Can you contact them and see if they can do your dog start to finish, so that they don't have to, maybe be there unnecessarily long, which even emotionally can be fatiguing for these dogs that may not have a lot of endurance because of what they're dealing with, or giving them breaks, as needed, as you spoke to, that these groomers are willing to accommodate. And I have found that more recently that is happening more and more. It's much easier. The client would come in and say, yeah, I called them and they said, to bring them in right at 7 and she could have them done by 8, so I'm just going to bring them in before work, or, whatever the case. And they're so thrilled and they didn't even think to ask. So,
right.
That's something too that, I think our listeners can, just don't be afraid to ask, tell them what's going on. And, yeah.
Okay.
The worst that somebody can do is say no.
Exactly. And then you find a new groomer. No.
And then you find somebody else who will do the right thing for you.
Right. Well, I want to speak a little bit about the Sani clip too, because this was something that I wasn't familiar with in terms of terminology. And, now after being in rehab and things for a long time, a dog, or for that matter, a cat, might come in and I'd be like, oh, well, that's an interesting haircut. And they're like, oh, it's a Sani clip. Well, now I know, right? So, Meghan, can you describe that for our listeners? And again, when that might be indicated, what is the function of that and how it helps with the dog's health and well-being?
Sure. So a sanitary clip is just what you might think. It has to do with the dogs being able to go to the bathroom, or being able to be clear to go to the bathroom. Oftentimes, actually, you see this a lot in people wanting their cats to have sanitary clips, where sometimes the cats can't clean themselves any longer. When they get older, they can't bend in the right way, or they're not taking care of their coats the right way, and the owner isn't maintaining, and it gets matted, or they're going to the bathrooms on themselves and things like that. So it's just shaving those areas to make sure that they're clean and that they can stay clean. They're easy to clean for the animal. They're easy to clean for the owner. And they're just nice short clips that way.
Right. Mm-hmm. So oftentimes it's a very furry dog that has a very dense coat, or cat, to your point. And, and maybe it's not even that they're not able to clean themselves, but that they have a medical issue going on.
Right. Or they have a medical issue. Yep. And sometimes there's also, this is kind of a weird one, but some male dogs pee and then they walk and then they pee on themselves.
Yes.
So there's kind of like a reverse of a sanitary clip, where you can leave a little bit of a longer hair. So it's sort of like you make a wick, so they can direct their pee just like goes down instead of going onto their front legs.
Oh my gosh. It's a wick. I love that.
Who knew, Chris? Who knew?
And urine, again, just as a reminder for our audience, urine is very acidic. And so if that stays on their skin, because it gets trapped in all that fur, and the animal can't clean themselves, or the human can't do it adequately, that can really cause painful skin irritation.
Burns.
It burns.
Yeah.
It literally
Yeah,
burns.
burns. I will actually speak to my personal dog on that one. So I have a Rhodesian Ridgeback. He's an intact male, and he does what I just said, where he walks and he pees all over everything. And his pee is so acidic that sometimes when he lays, if he hasn't finished or like there's a little bit of a dribble, I've noticed that he gets like a rashy burn, like right in his groin from where his penis lays up against him like that. And and then that has to be treated with a topical treatment, and you just have to like keep an eye on it, make sure it's keeping clean. So even dogs that aren't long coated, Ridgebacks, for those of you who don't know, are very short coated dogs.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. And, also fecal matter, it's full of bacteria. And if that isn't cleaned away, then that can lead to urinary tract infections, especially for female dogs and just skin infections themselves. You were talking about, cats. I was going to save the story. But my friend Marcia adopted a cat named Stars. And it wasn't because Stars was old. She was actually very young, but Stars was very rotund. And she liked, she didn't miss a meal. And it got to be a health problem in that Stars could not get around her belly.
Yeah. Oh no.
Herself. Yes. So Marcia, she got a Sani clip, and Marcia has worked on decreasing Stars' weight, and Stars has lived a happy life for years and years and years. But I recently saw Marcia, and she says she has now learned how to help Stars and, clip her and clean her and that sort of thing. Maybe it had to do with the fact that Stars was a found kitten, and when Marcia let her loose in her house, she went under her gas stove, and I scooped her out with a spoon. And so I think she's been forever traumatized by that experience. Needless to say, Stars is not a fan of Chris Cranston.
Chris Cranston, she remembers that. Poor Stars, she was too chubby to get around to the back.
Yep.
Poor kid.
Yep.
Poor kid.
That's her story.
Right. Well, it seems like I think we're just about ready to wrap up here, Chris, but I had just a few more things I was hoping that Meghan could speak to for our audience about giving advice on, and I think we touched on this, but maybe we could, round it up a little bit here about the frequency of bathing, brushing, and nail trims.
Oh, sure. So like I said, what's recommended is monthly grooming, like every 4 to 6 weeks is good for grooming. And that's the same for bathing. And because of that 21-day cycle, if you bathe them too frequently, you can strip out the natural oils that they use to distribute, throughout their hair, which, without going into the science of it, protects the function of the hair and the coat and the color and all of that stuff. But if you strip out all of that oil and you're not replacing it, you can actually start causing skin irritations and things like that. So there is too frequent of bathing if the dog can't handle it.
Yeah, good to know.
But I mean, on the other end, there's lots of dogs that do get weekly bathing. I mean, I would use, if you're going to do more often than once a month, I'd make sure you check with your vet first and see if there's a medical reason to be doing that. I do have clients that come in weekly because their vet recommended it. And so that's based on each individual, but in general, it's 4 to 6 weeks for bathing. At home brushing, you want to be doing that depending on what kind of coat type you have. If you have, a poodle coat or a long coated dog, you want to be doing that every day or every other day. The best thing to do to make sure you're protecting the coat itself and not damaging the coat, you want to be spraying some sort of a, detangler or a conditioning spray before you start brushing, so you're not breaking that coat, because then if you're breaking the coat, then you're going to go into damaging the natural regulation that coat does for the body's temperature and all that kind of stuff. But you want to be brushing daily if you have a dog that has long hair or curly hair or coat that can mat up. Small dogs not small dogs, but short hair dogs, brushing is equally as important because you want to remove that dead coat. There's just different brushes that you can use for that. They don't need daily brushing. I mean, weekly or bi-weekly brushing would be good for that. Nail trims, like we talked about, is every 2 to 6 weeks, depending on the length of the nail and if you're just trying to maintain length, or if you're trying to work a quick back and get it onto a shorter nail, you'd be doing it more frequently.
So Meghan, in wrapping things up here, something did come to mind. Growing up, we had Shetland sheepdogs, or Shelties, and for some reason, my mom thought that it was a good idea to have those dogs shaved in the summer because she thought that they were too hot, with their thick coats. Right. And, they would grow out, and I must say their coats were never the same after that. They never looked as healthy. They weren't as shiny. And so can you speak to that?
Yes, that is definitely not something I recommend doing. Double-coated dogs like that. A lot of people don't understand. We get most of the requests for haircuts on dogs like that are for golden retrievers. Because they think that their dog is hot. So that's always the reason that, I think they're uncomfortable. I think they're hot. But what they don't understand is that each breed's coat type has been designed for a particular task for that breed. And the coats, I can't talk about it without going really deep into it, into the science of it. But coats are designed to protect the dogs from the elements. Their coats are designed to regulate their temperatures so they stay cool in the winter. Cool in the summer and warm in the winter, insulated and warm in the winter. That's why, they grow extra coat and stay insulated in the winter, and then they shed it all out in the summer. That's a natural process that their coats go through that we as groomers help maintain to clean that undercoat out and keep everything clean and working properly. And when you start cutting into those primary hairs and those guard hairs and exposing the undercoat to UV lights and the elements, you're really damaging what the coat was designed to do. And you're actually making it worse. You're actually making them be unable to regulate their heat better. So we always educate people when they ask us to do something like that. We tell them no, and we tell them why, and make sure that they understand it. Because we want people to be happy. We want people to be getting what they want, but not with sacrificing the dog.
Yeah. Right. And I talked about the aesthetic of our Shelties after, but to your point, their coat was also very rough, very coarse. So I knew that it was permanently damaged. It wasn't soft like it had been previously. So, well, thank you for talking about that here in the 11th hour.
Thanks, Meghan. Yeah.
So Meghan, in conclusion, Kathy tells me that your artwork was recently featured, and this is a big deal. And when we're talking artwork, we're not talking paintings and drawings, but actually art with grooming.
Yes, I am a creative groomer, which I get really excited about. So I dye the coat on dogs, and creative grooming, you can kind of transform. You can do little things like dyeing ears and tails or feet, different colors, or you can get really into detailed work like kind of painting tattoos on their bodies, and so far as to sculpting coat into different animals or different pictures or creations and things like that. So that's something that I do when I can do that. And yes, I had 4 of my images featured in a creative grooming book that came out this year called Fashion Pet.
Wow. That's That is a big deal. That is a big deal. I actually have something that I would like to say. And I know our show is getting a little bit long, but I think this is kind of cool. So in preparing for this interview, of course, I research our friend Meghan, and they have some testimonials that are on their website. And I just thought that these would be kind of nice parting words. Meghan is the most passionate, caring, and knowledgeable person when it comes to animals. You only meet a few people in your lifetime that are genuinely born to do what they are doing. And this is the case when it comes to Meghan. She is a master at her craft. So
she really is.
I love that.
Very talented.
So we will put up the website for the Soggy Doggy in our show notes, and you'll find words like humane, gentle, affectionate, understanding, goodwill, integrity, peppered throughout the website. And, for those of you out there that aren't near Norwood, Massachusetts, those are some of the things that you should look for when you're researching a groomer for your own dog.
I'll actually jump in too and say there's the Fear Free Pets. I don't know their actual webpage, but we can find it. I think it's fearfreepets.com. They actually have a directory. So if you're not near Norwood or you're wondering if your groomer or your vet is fear free or offers fear free, or you're looking for one that offers it, they actually have a directory where you can look up by your zip code and find professionals in your area that are in on that program.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
That's a great resource. Thank you, Meghan. Thank you for taking all this time with us today.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
for
Meghan.
having me.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our show. Follow us on Facebook or on Instagram at PetAbility Podcast.
For more information about Kathy's books and living with blind dogs, please go to enableyourpet.com. Thank you, and please tune in next time.